You really believe in magic?
In Chinese black magic?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Are you still serious about this? And monsters and ghosts as well, I suppose.
Oh, sure. And sorcery.
And I suppose that you expect me to believe in sorcery as well.
Of course.
Why?
Because it's real.
How can I know that, Mr. Shen?
How?
Yes, how? Help me out here. Please. How?
See?
Cats and Voyeur was the first short film by director John Carpenter while a student. The 8-minute film is about a bored computer worker who becomes fixated on a woman at work and follows her back to her home. The film remained in the USC's Hugh M. Hefner's Moving Image Archive until in 2011 it was rediscovered by Dino Everett. The film is notable because it includes several elements that would appear in Carpenter's later horror film Halloween. Everett says that similarities include a striking resemblance between the lead actress. The film was eventually selected in 2011 for preservation by the National Film Preservation Foundation because of its historical significance in showing Carpenter's development as a filmmaker. The feature directorial debut for Carpenter was a student film called Dark Star. It's a 1974 American science fiction comedy that follows a crew in a deteriorating spaceship. It was produced and scored by Carpenter, just like a little film which came after, which changed his life forever. Halloween is a 1978 American slasher film directed and scored by John Carpenter, co-written with producer Deborah Hill, and starring Donald Pleasance and Jamie Lee Curtis in her film debut. Filming took place in Southern California in May 1978 before premiering in October, where it grossed $70 million, becoming one of the most profitable independent films, primarily praised for Carpenter's direction and score. Many credit the film has is because it's the first in a long line of slasher films inspired by Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 film Psycho and Bob Clark's 1974 classic Black Christmas. Some critics have suggested that Halloween may encourage sadism and misogyny by audiences identifying with its villain. Others have suggested that the film is a social critique of the immorality of youth and teenagers in 1970s America. A remake was released in 2007, which was followed by a sequel in 2009. These films were directed by Rob Zombie, who famously directed House of a Thousand Corpses. But an 11th instalment, which serves as a direct sequel to the original film that retcons all previous sequels, was released in 2018, which will soon have 2 follow-ups to hopefully finish Michael's and Laurie Strode's story once and for all.
Happy Halloween.
There you go. I'm being nosy now. I'm trying to check out what's on the shelf behind you.
Oh, they're just some NECA figures.
Gotcha. Yeah, Planet of the Apes. So it's all the boring stuff behind me. All my stuff is that way and that way. So
Why do you think Carpenter decides to have such strong synth scores throughout each of his films?
If you're talking about sort of stuff like The Fog and the first Halloween and stuff, it was very much an experimental time for sort of synth music in pop music anyway. So maybe that kind of bled over and stuff. And I know from kind of reading interviews and stuff with him, he's very into the mechanics of actually using synths and stuff anyway. And perhaps it might have been an easy composition tool for him and stuff. Like people like, as a musician, people like composing music on different instruments, like whatever's comfortable for them. You know, it might be a whole piece of music that they're doing, but they start off on an acoustic guitar, even if there's not that much acoustic guitar in the end of it. But I think definitely the time period that he started having majorly successful. That score music, in my opinion, is a very good way of scene setting and mood setting without necessarily being in your face. You know what I mean? If you watch like a bunch of, say, horror movies in particular, it's very obvious sometimes where you're being led to something, like a big scene's about to come up or a big scary moment's about to come up because of the direction and because of the dialogue and stuff. Where I think music is a very subtle way of doing it that you don't necessarily realise, but you're being sort of led in the right direction for the story with it. If you look at trying to think of anything like for instance Halloween, that kind of famous Halloween riff that he does on synth, it's very good at creating a tension just by doing that half note step up, but still doing the same riff, and that because it's not necessarily musically in key or anything, but he does that, and he kind of, it creates that tension for you that people go, I'm slightly uncomfortable about this. So, but without you realising or without it being obvious, that's exactly what it's doing. It's taking you to a place of tension and making you feel slightly uncomfortable about things. It's just a really clever way of doing stuff without being in your face about it.
Carpenter was born on January 16, 1948 in Carthage, New York, the son of Milton Jean and Harry Ralph Carpenter, a music professor. He and his family relocated to Bowling Green, Kentucky during 1953. He was interested in films from an early age, particularly the westerns of Howard Hawks and John Ford, as well as 1950s low-budget horror films such as The Thing from Another World, and high-budget science fiction films like Forbidden Planet. He began filming horror short films with 8mm film even before starting high school. He attended Western Kentucky University, where his father chaired the music department, then transferred to the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts during 1968, but quit to make his first feature film.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
They Live is a 1988 American science fiction action film based on the 1963 short story 8 O'Clock in the Morning. It follows an unnamed drifter who discovers through special sunglasses that the upper class are aliens, concealing their appearances and manipulating people. The film was a minor success at the time of its release, debuting number 1 at the North American box office. It originally received negative reviews criticising its social commentary, writing and acting. However, like other films by Carpenter, it later enjoyed a cult following and became recognised as a largely underrated work. The political elements of the film are derived from John Carpenter's growing distaste for the ever-increasing commercialism of 1980s popular culture and politics, particularly the influence of Reaganomics. That's the policies promoted by the US President Ronald Reagan.
Yo, 1 week's pay. It's the best I could do.
Wait!
Hey! You better find yourself someplace to hide and keep praying nobody ever finds you.
Try these on.
Look, you crazy mother.
Put these on.
Hey! Stay away from me!
I'm telling you, you dumb son of a... I'm trying to save you and your family's life.
You couldn't even save your own!
I'm giving you a choice. Either put on these glasses or start eating that trash can.
Not this year.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Come on.
This scene from They Live practically oozes the phrase, why not? Why not cast a pro wrestler in your lead role? Why not have your already absurd fight scene stretching on for 6 minutes? Why not have Piper chuckle in the middle of it? In the middle of your manufactured franchises and tentpole starters, I feel like more mainstream films could use a healthy dose of why not? Just look at the results. The They Live fight scene has become one of the most famous scenes in John Carpenter's filmography. No matter how we feel about it, it is a lovingly crafted set piece from a director having a blast with tone and style. Carpenter uses 3 cameramen to capture every elbow and angle, making sure there was never a moment where the lens wasn't squared on the 2 actors.
My personal favorites definitely would be The Thing. That's one actually probably is my favorite movie ever made. The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York, In the Mouth of Madness, all those. The ones that I've had, the one that especially has a personal impact on me is definitely The Thing. I watched that when I was pretty young with my dad. I watched that one with my dad, and I watched like Escape from New York and a few of those other ones early on with my dad. But The Thing is one that really got me. Oh, and also The Fog as well. I'll get to that. But The Thing, it's especially when you're younger, but even when you get older, you can understand it even more. It's the terror within. It's the terror that you can't see. It's biological, which obviously is even more frightening now. Yes, it's an alien, but it's much more complex than just a gray alien abducting you and sticking things in your body or whatever. It's the terror of being inside. It's like of not controlling your own body and not trusting those around you, which is scary, right? As a human being, you need interaction. You need to trust other people. And the interaction, if you take that and you pervert the interaction between people and make it dark, that's a scary thing. And that movie creeped me out as when I was younger, and it still creeps me out, to be honest. So officially, with this one, not that the rest of the movie didn't creep me out, but there was a weird TV cut of this movie where at the end of it, it actually shows a dog running away, and it has a weird narration over it saying, watch your friends, watch them close, because anyone could be the thing. And the movie already creeped me out, but then ending with somebody saying that really, really messed me up. And it got me thinking the possibilities of that. I mean, like, what if this didn't happen in Antarctica? What if it happened somewhere else, you know? So yeah, that movie affected me greatly. And it's still one of my favorite movies, and it's like I can watch that movie all the time, and it doesn't lose any shine to me at all. And I say one of the other ones that affected me greatly would be The Fog. I remember, like, I don't know how young I was when I watched it, but I remember still to this day when I see the fog rolling, I think of those pirates with leprosy coming in the fog. You know, I think of what's creepy and hides in it. It's what Carpenter does really well, right? He takes and he can pervert like what you have in your life every day and make it creepy. So you got like you're in the fog, right? Now it's something you deal with on a day-to-day, and now it has something darker behind it, which is what we all imagine in our heads anyways, which is why it's scary. In the Mouth of Madness, right? That's very Lovecraftian, but it's like it deals with your imagination. It deals with what goes deeper in your psyche.
First of all, remakes in general are popular now because of the amount of money a company has to spend advertising to get people in the theaters. And one way to cut through the clutter of advertising that's out there is to come with a title in recent memory that they've heard of. So, for instance, all the horror remakes. Maybe the thinking is maybe you saw it with your brother when you were young on home video, or you've seen it on television, and we're going to update it. So it has a built-in awareness, which is the number that they're trying to reach, to get the audience, the customer out there, aware that your movie is in the theaters. And it tends to be why they remake horror. I'll say a word about horror. Horror has been with cinema since the very beginning. It grew up part and parcel with the image, with cinema. And it will always be with us. It's one of the most popular genres of all time. And it's an all-purpose genre because it keeps changing. Every culture, every few years, it morphs, it changes into something else. It brings the sensibilities of the age in which it's made, that's what's so fabulous. If you look at Frankenstein or Dracula or The Bride of Frankenstein, the Karloff films that were made at this studio, they're very much of the 30s and the Depression. They're Depression-era movies. They're speaking to those audiences. But if you look at modern horror films, they're speaking to you guys. And they bring the sensibility that you've become used to seeing and you demand seeing in film.
To date, 3 of Carpenter's 18 features have been remade, those being Halloween, The Fog, and Assault on Precinct 13. The Thing was sort of remade as well. It's basically a prequel story that shared the same title and covered almost all the same plot points. None of these remakes received great reviews, but is Carpenter bothered by that? No, not even a bit. He recently offered the following comments on the subject to the Guardian newspaper. I love it. If they are going to pay me money, it's wonderful. If they pay me money, I don't care. I think it's unfair if they don't pay me money. I think everyone should pay me money. I'm an old guy now, and I need money. Send me money. While Carpenter's tone seems to be at least somewhat tongue-in-cheek, like in his films, it's doubtful that he doesn't mean what he says. The most noteworthy remake of John Carpenter's classic work is Rob Zombie's Halloween franchise. Personally, I quite enjoyed the first half of the first installment, which shows a young Michael Myers talking with Dr. Loomis, who's portrayed by Malcolm McDowell. But on the other hand, the Rob Zombie sequel Halloween 2 is extremely poor compared to the original sequel from 1981. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 shows Michael Myers as a towering, overpowered brute. It goes against everything the original stood for. The original is so plain and simple, and that's what makes it excellent.
He is one of the directors, he's like Marmite, you either love him or you hate him. Personally, I'm one of the people that love him. I think he's an absolutely fantastic director, visionary, who brought a lot of independent ideas to film and made them hits. He wasn't afraid to do what he wanted on film. And he is the prime example of a remake or, his own vision, which actually become, in most people's eyes, the definitive version, in which I mean The Thing. I mean, he's brought classics like Halloween, Assault on Precinct 13, Christine, The Thing, yeah, and many, many more. Big Trouble in Little China. Yeah, the list is endless. The guy's reign is just so impressive, and he's inspired so many directors of modern cinema to do what they want and bring fresh ideas to the table, as he did in the 70s and 80s.
Got three favourites, and possibly because they were all three I saw at the same time. I was a very, very small child. So it was Halloween, but also The Fog. I was genuinely trying to remember which one I saw first, and I think it might have been The Fog, actually. And Halloween, obviously, because it was very much a kind of first-ish sort of that genre of horror films. So it kind of set a stall out for a lot of people, and they didn't know what to expect from it. So I particularly enjoyed The Fog, particularly enjoyed Halloween, but also something that people might not associate with him a lot, that I saw exactly at the same time, was he did a Elvis Presley biopic.
Is Kurt Russell.
With Kurt Russell in. And kind of when I was at school, I was a big kind of rock and roll head, and Elvis and Eddie Cochran and Stray Cats and things like that. And although it was a TV movie, I don't know about it in the States, but it actually came over here into cinema. So I actually got to see it in the cinema. So yeah, those three are equal favourites for me.
Elvis is a 1979 American made-for-television biographical film directed by John Carpenter and starring Kurt Russell as Elvis Presley. It originally aired on ABC. It marks the last role on television for Russell and the first collaboration between him and Carpenter. Carpenter says the film involved 150 locations and was shot over 30 days. Some of the days we were moving to 3 and 4 locations. He said, when you have a big union crew with a lot of trucks and stuff, you have to run very fast. You have to shoot something in the morning, shoot something in mid-afternoon, and shoot something right before you quit at night. That's what happened. We were just running. But with all this, Carpenter was very unhappy with the experience on the film, due to him not being able to edit or score the film, like he usually does with all his projects.
Hi there, my name's Dan and I'm a DIY horror filmmaker working out of Yorkshire in England. Horror films are hugely popular, but I think it's worth remembering that they're hugely divisive as well. You either love them or you hate them, and in that sense they're kind of like Marmite or roller coasters. But amongst the people who do love horror films, and there are huge numbers of horror fans out there, among the people who do love them, they are deeply, deeply passionate about them, I think. It's certainly in my experience. There's many different reasons why people love horror films. For me, I love that feeling of fear and dread. It's I think as you go through life, you kind of get used to processing a lot of emotions: happiness, joy, love, sadness, anger, jealousy. You practice these, you get used to how these feel, you can manage them better. But with fear and dread, we don't have many opportunities, thank goodness, to practice and hone our responses to this. So when we do feel fear, it feels very, very fresh to us. So that's interesting. But also I think, just it's a shared experience as well. Like when you go and see a horror film in a theatre, it's, and everybody jumps at the same moment and then laughs. That's just magic. And it's the same when there's a really gory moment and everyone kind of goes, at the same time, it's just a great shared experience. So I think that's one of the reasons, many reasons, why horror films remain popular and will continue to do so.
So while I'm not the most familiar person with John Carpenter, one thing which I really do love about him is how he creates tension, and his scores for films are fantastic. One film which has always inspired me has to be The Thing by John Carpenter. This film was just unlike anything I've ever watched. It's still pretty fresh for me because I only watched it recently, and one thing that I really loved about it is just how there are so many twists and turns in it, and when you think you've got everything figured out, something else kind of comes out of nowhere. And I don't know, this film really hits on many levels. It's really clever, smart, gory. It has everything you want from a horror film, and a lot of John Carpenter films do that. While I'm not incredibly familiar with them all, the ones I have seen, as I say, there's something special about them, and you can't recapture what that man has done in cinema. He's absolutely incredible. And he's someone who will always be remembered, and will go down as one of the best people working in the film industry in the horror genre.
100,000 years ago, it found its way into our galaxy. Trapped in the frozen wasteland of Antarctica, it could not escape. Now the men of Station 4 have made a monumental discovery. An alien creature had frozen, but not to death. And man, it isn't Benny, is the warmest place to hide.
Production on The Thing began in the mid-1970s as a faithful adaptation of 1951's The Thing from Another World. The Thing went through several directors and writers, each with different ideas on how to approach the story. Filming lasted roughly 12 weeks, beginning in August 1981 and took place on refrigerated sets in Los Angeles. The Thing was released in 1982 to very negative reviews. It was described as instant junk, a wretched excuse, and proposed as the most hated film of all time by film magazines. Reviews both praised the special effects achievements and criticised their repulsiveness, while others focused on poor characterisation. The film earned $19.6 million during its theatrical run. Many reasons have been cited for its failure to impress the audiences.
My earliest memory is The Thing. I didn't even know it was John Carpenter at the time. But that was my introduction to John Carpenter, was The Thing. I'd seen the 1950s. I'd even seen the earlier one. So didn't think much of those ones. And then was brought into this world, and it's still in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. The Thing. It's just amazing. It's one of my favorite all-time movies. I like Halloween. I think Thing has aged really well. I don't think Halloween has aged as well. I think you can put The Thing on. Well, I watched The Thing about 3 years ago with my daughter, and she loved it. She likes the practical effects in it. The pacing is great. All the characters are brilliant. Like, you're on the edge of your seat all the time. Well, I think Halloween, which again is a good movie, but I think the pacing these days, I think people want things quicker. I think the pacing is just a little bit off. If you watch a modern slasher, you don't see a guy hiding behind a bush for 45 minutes of the movie. I was booked to go and watch him in Manchester. Fortunately, he cancelled, so I didn't get to see him. But no, I like the music. What I like about John Carpenter is that even his crap movies are watchable. You know, you look at some of his early stuff's better. I think he kind of peaked mid-80s really. Like Escape from New York's brilliant. You know, Thing's brilliant. Halloween's brilliant. Music's great. The music in Escape from New York is immense. It's dead simple. It's like 3 chords through the whole movie, but you just know straight away that it's John Carpenter. For me, horror. I grew up watching Universal Monsters and Hammer. That's my passion is older horror movies. And I think that the community around them, like I said before, even crap horror movies and stuff, are watchable. I've watched some appalling horror movies, but enjoyed them. And I think if you watch an appalling action movie, like whatever, but in horror movies, there's always something quite interesting. It's like comics. You know, the worst comic, there'll be something in there that you like. And I think the community around it, the horror community is great, and they're so friendly, and they're so. I've been taking my daughter to HorrorCon since she was, I think 4 was the first one, and she met what's he called, Simon Pegg, and they kind of walked around with her and stuff. So she's been around horror. In fact, her bedroom is just full of horror pops. Favorite thing at the moment is Pennywise, but absolutely love horror, and I've always. I like the fact that it's made by real people. It's usually, like these days, made by fans, people who like the genre, people who want to scare, like Eli Roth and people like who've grown up watching John Carpenter, who've grown up watching these movies. And also, I think even with horror, you get the kind of high-end Hollywood stuff, and then you get the really low budget. So you got right the way through of different types of horror that appeals to everyone. You got the high, like Exorcist, which was high. I know. It was a proper studio movie, The Omen, proper studio movie, and now you've got all the Blunt stuff, the guy Invisible Man and stuff like that. To me, that's kind of going back to the studio stuff again. Letting them have the reins on horror. The thing for me is a Carpenter classic. I do like Halloween. I like slasher movies, so Halloween will always have it's overtook Friday 13th for me. Has overtook Halloween. Halloween was threw down the market. This is how we should do stuff. If you watch the first Friday 13th movie, it's pretty much a Halloween movie. It's dead slow, very slow. Use the same sort of camera angles, the same sort of music. So I could talk all day, but
Big Trouble in Little China tells the story of Jack Burton, who helps his friend Wang Chi rescue Wang's green-eyed fiancée from bandits in San Francisco's Chinatown. The first version of the screenplay was written by first-time screenwriters Gary Goldman and David Z. Weinstein. Goldman had been inspired by a new wave of martial arts films that had all sorts of weird actions and special effects. The film was a commercial failure, grossing $11.1 million in North America, below its estimated 19 to 25 million budget. It received mixed reviews that left Carpenter disillusioned with Hollywood and influenced his decision to return to independent filmmaking. It has since become a cult classic and has a 79% average on Rotten Tomatoes and a steady audience on home video. The film's portrayal of the lightning sorcerer demigod character has been occasionally described as an inspiration for the character of Raiden from Mortal Kombat, introducing the archetype of a straw hat wearing monk able to control lightning with his hands. In June 2015, The Warp reported that Dwayne Johnson was developing a remake to star as Jack Burton and produce with his Stephen Bucks Productions film studio. Ashley Miller and Zach Stentz were hired screenwriters. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Johnson expressed interest in having Carpenter involved in the film.
comics and film, they've each got one particular point which makes it easier than the other. The biggest thing about comics is there's no budget. But you can do whatever you want to. So that's what makes comics for me a lot easier than film. There's no budget. Although you do kind of regret it a lot when the writer hands your scripts and it says, panel 1, crowd scene. There's 1,567 people in this. Thanks for that. Appreciate that. So obviously that in theory is a lot easier to do than in a film, even with CGI and what have you, to get like 1,500 people.
I think whenever someone mentions John Carpenter to me, it kind of takes me right back to my early teens of watching pirated videos, and I sort of made a point of watching all of these films, from The Fog, Escape from New York, The Thing, Christine, Starman, right up to Big Trouble in Little China. And then I sort of lost interest in these films, and I don't think I've watched anything since. And then I've recently just been watching a series called Happy, which I found out he was a writer of a few episodes, so I didn't even realise he was still about.
So yeah, John Carpenter is definitely a director to be celebrated. He definitely he is responsible for one of my all-time favourite films, being Christine. I grew up watching Christine, you know, and not only is he a great director, he's a great in pretty much every aspect of film. You know, he does, for a lot of films, he does the music. It's just a passion project. Every film he does is a passion project from start to finish. And you can't help but just respect a man who puts so much passion into his craft. It's not about the money when it comes to the likes of John Carpenter. You know, you can just tell he does it for the love of film. So, and what more could you ask for in a director, a movie maker, a visionary, than passion, love for the craft? You'll never find anyone who put as much into their craft as John Carpenter has.
Films like In the Mouth of Madness and Memoirs of an Invisible Man are two of many forgotten greats in Carpenter's filmography. Body Bags is a 1993 American horror comedy anthology television film featuring 3 unconnected stories with bookended segments, featuring John Carpenter, Tom Arnold and Toby Hooper as deranged morgue attendees. In the Mouth of Madness is one of Carpenter's best works, but it gets buried under films like Halloween and The Thing. It pays tribute to the work of seminal horror writer H.P. Lovecraft, with many references to his stories and themes. Its title is a play on Lovecraft's novella At the Mountains of Madness and Insanity. This film is the 3rd installment in Carpenter's apocalyptic trilogy, preceded by The Thing and Prince of Darkness. Prince of Darkness is a 1987 American supernatural horror film. It was shot in Los Angeles, California in 30 days. Carpenter became inspired while researching theoretical physics and atomic theory. He said, "I thought it would be interesting to create some sort of ultimate evil and combine it with the notion of matter and antimatter." Every score which comes out of Carpenter's films are phenomenal. The main theme from Halloween has become one of the most loved themes in cinema history, as well as the spectacular main theme from Escape from New York. As well as creating music for his films, he has also created a handful of songs which are made just for the love of the art, such as his latest album, Skeleton. Carpenter has reimagined his original Halloween score for every sequel within the franchise. The biggest change which can be heard in these reimagined themes is the one from Halloween 2018, where it's very heavy with guitars compared to the original piano theme. A big way John Carpenter gets his music heard is definitely through his films. but he uses concerts to his advantage by playing segments of his films on a big screen behind him whilst he plays his most loved themes to a live audience.
When you get into horror and you look at the films that are out there, there are probably 4 towering names in terms of directors. Tobe Hooper, George Romero, Wes Craven, of course, and probably at the top of that is John Carpenter. All of his work is just incredible. It really is. He's one of the masters of horror, and it's hard to see anyone sort of knock him off the top spot there. My favourite film of his, he's done loads of great films, but my favourite has to be Halloween. So much has been spoken about and written about Halloween. I'm not sure what I can add, but it was a huge influence on me because, you know, John Carpenter is the original kind of DIY horror filmmaker. You know, he wrote that film along with Deborah Hill. He produced it. He's not credited as a producer, but he did produce it again along with Deborah Hill, and he obviously directed it, and he did that fantastic score for it. So he kind of did everything, and that's something that, you know, when you're thinking about getting into film and stuff like that, you go, well, actually, no, I don't need a big team. I can do this. I can do this by myself and just start. So that was hugely empowering to me to see Halloween and to see that he did all of that. But the film itself is just a stunning piece of work. It's really, for me, the first film where kind of all of what we now know as the traditional kind of slash elements really came together in one film. We had slasher films before, you know, Bay of Blood, Black Christmas, all of that kind of thing. But Halloween was really where it all sort of came together. And also it's one of the first films I can recall seeing that kind of was a slasher film, but also kind of did away with the whodunit element. You know, previously, like Black Christmas, I said, you know, there was all that sort of mystery as to who the killer was and what drove them. Halloween just got rid of that totally. It's just like, no, here's your killer, and there's no reason why he's doing this, other than, you know, he just is a psycho without empathy. So that was hugely interesting. I think one of the really powerful things about Halloween was just that Michael Myers is a dude. He's just a regular guy. There's nothing supernatural about him. He's just a bad guy. And the other thing that really struck me when I watched it was the fact that he just seemingly just picked Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, out. And just like, no, I'm going to terrorise you. I'm coming for you. I know, like, in later films, they kind of went down the whole route of Laurie being his sister, but in the first film, there's no mention of that at all. And I think I read somewhere that, you know, they didn't really come up with that until they got to make the sequel. So, you know, when you watch the first one in isolation, you know, it's just a killer who just picks someone randomly. And there's just something about that that's really unnerving, because it could happen. It does happen, I'm sure it does. But Halloween is just an absolute masterclass in that genre.
Hello, I am Lucas Higham, otherwise known as The Filmmaker on YouTube, hence the name The Filmmaker. I am The Filmmaker, I make films, and it's been a pleasure to be invited on to this documentary about John Carpenter, another film director, another filmmaker. I think he's a fantastic director. Unfortunately, I haven't seen many of his films. I've only seen 2. Possibly 2 of his most well-known films, that being Halloween, the film that put him on the map, and The Thing, both exceptional films that I absolutely love watching. I think Halloween is the film that I've seen most of his because I watch it every Halloween, and there's a reason for that, because obviously it's iconic, but it's also got this lovely flow to the film as well, that Carpenter does very well with all of his films that I've seen. Again, only 2, so I'm not the John Carpenter expert. And he's also famous, of course, for doing the iconic Halloween, you know, piano type thing. I mean, I'm sure if you've never heard of the theme tune, the thing that I just did there sounds nothing like it, but yeah, he's not exactly a Kubrick, he's not a Scorsese, you know. He does these interesting horror action thriller projects, and he does them well. He does them very well, and of course he birthed the iconic Halloween franchise as well. I think anything I would watch of his I'd moderately enjoy, because he is a very good director.
John Carpenter, the master of horror, the living legend, he's done so many classic films which we loved till the end of time. Films like Halloween and The Thing will always be fantastic, and it's truly amazing how many films created by this one man. These films will be going down in history as true cinematic masterpieces. These films are so groundbreaking for their times. I think that's why they still resonate with people today. And nothing can top the phenomenal worlds and characters he has created throughout his years alive.
John Carpenter, probably one of the best horror directors ever. He's done films such as The Thing, The Fog and Halloween.
John Carpenter, he makes spooky movies and funny movies. Spooky, my favourite. Action and horror.
So, John Carpenter, yes, Halloween is very good.
Halloween, from 1978, is definitely a film you want to watch on your own. First time, me and my friend ended up turning it off, but the second, fully immersed in the atmosphere, it was brilliant. That's all you need.
Just remember what old Jack Burton does. When the earth quakes, and the poison arrows fall from the sky, and the pillars of heaven shake. Yeah, Jack Burton looks that old sword right square in the eye and he says, "Give me your best shot, pal. I can take it."
I know it's raining, baby. I'm stripped of all my pride. I stand here at your door, sick of all the lies. Oh, let me come inside. I couldn't see myself. The room was filled with signs. A strange woman kissed me, a tattoo in her eye. me come inside. Forget about the past, forget about the guilt. I'm going back to the house. Love bells, love bells. Nowhere to go, no way to tell if I'm nearer to heaven or one step closer to hell. Closer to hell. Forget about the past, forget about the guilt. I'm going back to the house. Love bells, love bells. The house of love bells. The house of love bells. The house of love bells.
Hey, this is regular vanilla. I wanted vanilla twist.